The church in America is in crisis. There is some very bad news lurking around the corner that could have a disastrous impact on the future of the church as we know it in America. I don't have any brilliant answers as to how we solve this looming problem, but if we are aware of it, we can turn to God and start earnestly asking Him to show us a way forward. There are a number of issues within the church that we address on this channel, but I think this one is right up there with the most dangerous of them. Let me show you a graph. This graph is from this YouTube channel. YouTube provides all kinds of data to the people who have a certain number of subscribers and enough hours of viewing on their channel. This graph on the screen shows the age demographic of viewers of this channel. What do you notice? I notice that there are almost no viewers in their 20s, 30s, or 40s. I could perhaps explain this by concluding that these younger folks just don't care what a boring old guy like me has to say. And that may very well be true, but this isn't the only data that shows a lack of involvement in Christianity by people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. I'm going to quickly share a number of data sets from different sources that consistently show this same dynamic. And that dynamic means that the church in America has an impending crisis. Or maybe it's not impending, maybe it's already here and we've just failed to recognize it. To dig into this a little bit, let's consider the following two observations. The number of Christians in Africa has just about doubled in the last 2 decades, 100% growth in a period of about 20 years. And while accurate numbers from China are a little hard to get, the estimates of the growth in China is that the number of Christians there has grown by 50 to 100 times in the last 4 decades. That's not a 50 to 100% increase. That's a 5,000 to 10,000% increase. Now, let's compare that to how things are going in the U.S. How is Christianity doing here, in the country that has perhaps the greatest religious freedom in the world? We're already largely a Christian nation, so we wouldn't reasonably expect to see these kinds of large numbers like Africa and China. Well, it turns out that church Christian affiliation and attendance in the U.S. has been in decline for 6 straight decades. The decline was pretty steady from 1960 to 2000, but since 2000, the rate of decline has notably increased. As a matter of fact, a Gallup survey in 2021 revealed that the percentage of Americans that belong to a church was 47%. That's the first time in the history of this nation this number was below 50%. Now, let's dig in a little deeper and see if we can figure out where this decline is happening. There are a lot of numbers on this chart. It's probably hard to see them on your screen. So let me point out a couple of significant observations. The percentage of Americans in their 70s, 80s, and 90s that consider themselves as a Christian ranges from 80 to 88%. 8 to 9 out of every 10 Americans in that age group considers themselves a Christian. For people in their 50s and 60s, the number drops to about 75%. In their 40s, it's 64%. In their 30s, it's 56%. And in their 20s, it's barely 50%. In this chart, we see something very similar. In summary, the number of people aged 30 to 34 that consider themselves Christians has dropped from 90% in 1990 to 65% in 2020. And the number of those that consider themselves religiously unaffiliated has risen at the same basic rate that the number who consider themselves Christians has dropped. We could show lots of data from lots of studies, but they all show a remarkably similar story. And that is that the younger people in the country, those in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, are notably less likely to be affiliated with any church or consider themselves a Christian. And it's not a slight drop off from those in their 50s or older. It's a large drop off, frequently 30, 40% or more. So when I look at the viewership of this YouTube channel and see that there are few to no viewers in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, it's not unique. It's not unique at all. As a matter of fact, it's just par for the course. It's just reflective of the lack of interest and participation in church and Christianity that we see across the nation for people of this age range. And thus, I think you can start to see the crisis that the church in America is facing. Over the next couple of decades, as the older people die off, which will obviously happen, and those that are left behind have little interest in Christianity or the church, what happens to the church? There's a real simple answer to that. It gets rapidly smaller. When those that are participating disappear and those remaining don't care to participate, there's only one obvious answer. The church in America rapidly declines. So that leads us to a significant question. Why is this happening? I have my ideas, you probably have yours, but rather than debate the merits of our individual thoughts and opinions, I hope we can agree on one thing. It's not a comfortable thing. As a matter of fact, it's rather uncomfortable. But that is, that if we are honest with ourselves, we can only conclude that the way we have been conducting our church activities, our overall approach to Christianity and the church, has not been working. That's uncomfortable to say, but what other conclusion is there? We can make all kinds of excuses. We can blame the government. We can blame the schools. We can blame Hollywood. We can blame big tech. We can blame all kinds of things. But the blame game doesn't change the fact that the way we've been approaching things hasn't been working very well. So I guess you could say we're at a Y in the road. Do we just keep doing the same things we've always done and somehow expect the results to suddenly change? That's the common definition of insanity, by the way. Or do we admit that this formalized, institutionalized, church-building-based, professional clergy-based approach, none of which is instructed in the Bible, needs to be revamped? When more than 80% of the kids that are raised going to church on a regular basis leave the church within a year of graduating high school and rarely, if ever, come back, what possible justification could we have to say we're going to keep doing things the same way? And if we can't keep our own kids faithful that have been raised in the church, what makes us think we'll have any better outcomes with the few outsiders we do manage to attract? So what do we do? I'm not going to suggest that I have all the answers because I don't. But I know who does, and we need to start putting this matter before Him and asking for His guidance. We need to humbly turn to God and ask Him to show us the way. Even if that means we need to fundamentally change a lot of the ways we've been doing church. We need to be open to whatever and wherever God leads us. So I'm going to do something that I try not to do too often in these videos. I'm going to do a bit of begging, asking you to hit the like button or perhaps leave a comment. Both of these things help the algorithm show this video to more people. Better yet, hit the share button and share with others you know that are sincere about their Christianity and want God's church to flourish. Because the more of us that are aware of this problem, the more of us can get on our knees and start asking God how to move forward. Asking God what we need to do to move His church from shrinking to growing, from dying to thriving. So please hit the like button, leave a comment, or share the video. And think about subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, so we can continue this conversation in the coming weeks and months. Thanks so much for listening. God bless you on your journey.